Pat Dooris. Welcome to The Story. Tonight we're going to take a break from the weather for at least a few minutes, and we're going to talk about law and order. When all the ice melts, we're still going to have issues with the criminal justice system here. Multnomah County District Attorney Mike Schmidt is running for re-election now. His opponent is a veteran prosecutor from Schmidt's own office. We talked with that challenger, Nathan Vasquez, in late November. He accused the DA of wrecking the relationship with Portland police, cutting way back on the number of cases being prosecuted, and basically being way out of his league because he only briefly worked as a district attorney years ago. Now it's time to sit down with Mike Schmidt, and that's our big story tonight. Now, whether you live in Multnomah County or not, I think you are going to find this downright fascinating. Mike Schmidt is the top law enforcement person in Oregon's most populated county, so his approach to crime makes a big difference. It's a big deal. He was elected by a landslide just before the murder of George Floyd. Since then, critics have accused him of being soft on crime, something he says is not accurate. I began our discussion by asking how 3 years into his term now, he thinks the county is doing when it comes to people feeling safe.
Well, clearly, we're hearing from people that they don't feel safe. And so I think that that's a real challenge for us. I think a lot of people have a lot of love for this city, a lot of faith and a lot of hope, and they see things that they see signs of improvement. But we certainly haven't gotten to the place where people are feeling safe. We have a lot of work to do. Do
you feel any of that's your responsibility or your fault, I guess, more sharply?
Well, I think my responsibility, certainly, as we talk about, and I try to get the word out, and I appreciate being interviewed here with you because it's about getting the word out. What's the work that we're doing? I talk to every single grand jury that comes through the courthouse. And at the end of it, these are 7 community members who sit and they hear cases for a month. And almost to a person, they say, I had no idea all this was going on. You guys are doing all kinds of cases. Police officers are doing fantastic work. We never hear about this. So I think where my responsibility lies in terms of people feeling safe is to be communicative and try to get the word out that work is going on, collaboration's happening, and we're getting results.
So the city, the county is safe, but people just don't realize it because of the messaging?
Well, I think there's certainly messaging in terms of letting people know the good work that's happening and letting people know that things are happening. But we have real challenges, especially over the pandemic. We saw gun violence really increase, homicides in the city spiked. It's great that in 2023 we're seeing all categories of crime across Portland receding, homicides down a significant amount, 20-25%, something like that. Auto theft similarly down that same amount, so we're making progress. But there are real challenges that we're facing. We continue to not have defense attorneys being appointed to cases, which makes our ability as prosecutors to hold people accountable challenging. So it's both. It's letting people know the good work that's happening and the progress being made, and there are real challenges that we face.
Now, I wondered if one of those challenges is his relationship with Portland police. His office rejected 90% of the 2020 protest-related cases that were brought by police. And then prosecutors filed an assault charge against an officer for something that happened during a protest. The officer and the victim eventually came to a compromise that involved the officer publicly apologizing. How's your relationship with Portland police?
I think the relationship is good. Certainly, we started off on a challenging note, coming in the protest like I did. Didn't have kind of the runway that would have been great to have in a high stress, high tense situation like that. But since then, one of my favorite meetings every single month is meeting with the chief in his office at 7 a.m. on the 13th floor, the 15th floor of the Central Precinct. And we get together, there's no agenda. The U.S. Attorney's Office is there, his staff is there, I bring my first assistant, and we just sit around and we talk through our issues. We talk about the challenges facing our community. We spitball on ways that we can work together and collaborate, and we've been doing that for 3 years, and that's how you get partnerships like our auto theft task force and our retail theft task force and the street racing mission that I went on New Year's Eve. So it's all about, communication and collaboration, and I think that despite starting off on kind of a rocky foot, we're making inroads. And when you look at our prosecution rates, which are higher than they've been the last 7 or 8 years, you don't do that by yourself. That's not a one-sided, oh, look at me. That's a partnership. That's collaboration. That means that police officers and prosecutors are working together. gathering the evidence we need, and we're able to make the cases.
All right, so far we've heard Schmidt say that people do not feel safe in Multnomah County, but that crime is going down. And part of the problem is just messaging, that people just don't know that things are getting better. He also feels his relationship with Portland police is good. But what about prosecuting crimes? His challenger, Mr. Vasquez, said the DA's office under Schmidt is only prosecuting about 6,000 cases a year, about half the number that was compared to before Schmidt took over. Schmidt says that is not accurate.
Yeah, well, we can get those numbers, but what I've seen in terms of felony cases being referred to our office, we saw a slight dip during the pandemic, during 2020, 21, 22, slight, but not massive. And our prosecution rates of those also similarly had a slight dip during COVID and now are higher than they've been since well before my predecessor was in office. Misdemeanors is where we've seen the big decline in terms of cases being referred to our office. There are reasons for that. In fact, we looked into the different issues in terms of that. One of the big ones was ballot measure 110 decriminalized about 2,000 to 2,500 cases that would be coming to our office on an annual basis. So that's just work that doesn't exist anymore. Those aren't misdemeanors anymore. So of course they're not coming to our office. What we're seeing is a rebound in misdemeanor referrals to our office and a higher prosecution rate. So last year we prosecuted in 2023 around 4,700 misdemeanors, almost 5,000 misdemeanor cases, and about 5,000 felony cases. So that's about 10,000 cases, give or take some of the math there.
Well, I followed up with Mr. Schmidt's office, and they reported that in 2023, the office actually issued 8,384 total cases. Issued means the cases are officially filed and then moving on in the system. So less than Schmidt estimated there, but also more than Vasquez estimated when we talked with him. The office reports that the total number of cases brought to them by police was 12,772, and that 72% of those cases were issued, and that's a 7-year high. The office noted that 1,051 cases are still pending and another 3,337 were dismissed because they did not have enough evidence. I had told Mr. Schmidt that the interview would be a two-part focus, really, partly on how he thinks the job is going so far, which we've kind of covered, and partly on his qualification to run for re-election. This next part now gets into the political re-election side. His challenger says that Schmidt simply lacks experience and that it's hurting the community. Okay, and then just getting sort of more onto the campaign side, how many major felony cases have you tried?
Have I tried? Well, I think, I was in the office. I started as a deputy district attorney in 2007. I started as an intern. I prosecuted in the office till 2013. The majority of my time was spent in Unit A, which is our property crimes unit. So that's where a lot of my trial experience came from, was in property crimes. I also left the office. I worked in the legislature. I worked and ran a state agency for 6 years where I got to travel internationally and look at other systems and see how they do things different. So I have both. I have a perspective of being a frontline attorney trying cases, and I also have what it takes to run an agency, which is a different level of experience most people don't have.
Which leads to the second question. Your opponent, career veteran prosecutor, has handled the biggest cases. Don't you think it makes a difference on whether the person leading the office has that sort of experience?
Well, I think there are a lot of different types of experience that really matter. That's his case to be made about why he wants to argue that he's better. But I'll tell you, the district attorney before me and the district attorney before him weren't trying cases. We hire attorneys. We run a 250, 260 person law firm. Only about a third of the staff are attorneys. We have to deal with everything from HR, budget, IT, administrative staff. And really the job of the district attorney is outward facing. It's building relationships, it's building coalitions. Since I've been the district attorney, the office has grown. Our budget has increased almost 20%. When I took over as the district attorney, we had 75 attorneys. Today we have 88. That reverses an over a decade's worth of trend of our office being cut and having our resources dwindle. So how am I able to do that? Because I'm outward facing. I have relationships. If you look at the folks supporting me on the campaign side, my endorsers, I got, most of the elected officials in our community are supporting me. And that's not just to say, oh, look, they're supporting me. That's how you get things done. That's how a leader leads an office, because I need those folks when I want grant funding from Salem, when I want the county commission to increase our attorney capacity, We had an outside audit of our office that says we need 110 prosecuting attorneys to handle the workload that we're given in Multnomah County. So we're up to 88. That's great news. We still have a long way to go, but you need somebody who has that outward-facing experience, that administrative experience. I think that's absolutely crucial, and the relationships to get it done.
Which then led to the question about the billboards, which you may have seen around Portland. They're paid for by backers of the group People for Portland, who try to use public pressure to get elected officials to take action in areas where the group feels they are lacking. One of the most visible talks about the county being a Schmidt show. The billboards downtown.
Yeah.
A very personal attack on you and your leadership role and the way that you're running your office. What's your response to that?
Well, you know, since day one of taking this office, I had to deal with Donald Trump calling me out in a speech on a runway saying, you know, the district attorney from Portland, Mike Schmidt, you know, I mean, so I've been dealing with these kind of right-wing attacks, this disinformation and misinformation. You look at the billboards and it says all about the crime, everything else like that. Well, crime's going down across the board. So it's scare tactics. It's also quite honestly, I think Portlanders in general, I think are just, where this is the home of Portlandia, the four-way stop, the infinite four-way stop, where everyone's waving the other person go. We're nice people, we're kind people. These are kind of petty. They don't have solutions. So I mean, imagine spending all that money and not proposing any solutions, just doing character attacks and stuff as juvenile as using somebody's last name. I think it's kind of beneath. I think a lot of people, turns a lot of people off. I think when I'm talking to folks out on the campaign trail, what I'm hearing from people is that we're here because we care about this community. We love this community. I think we're getting over the people who want to trash this community and divide us. So, you know, I think other people have said this, don't bet against Portland. This is a hopeful place, and people want solutions, and they want people who are going to be positive and digging in and not just, you know, trying to cut people down and using their name.
Which then brought us to Measure 110, which decriminalized drugs. Both Schmidt and his challenger Vasquez agree it does need to be changed.
We need some changes, no doubt about it. First and foremost, I think that the legislature needs to do something about people using drugs on our streets.
And by do something, you mean make it illegal?
Make it illegal. Right now it's a violation, so it's a ticket, right? A ticket. So yeah, my proposal, and we put together a memo for the legislature that we have shared with our legislative folks here in Multnomah County, and the chairs, Jason Krupp out of Bend, and Kate Lieber, the Senate Majority Leader. And so we've shared that memo with them. It says that we should criminalize open use on our streets. But we shouldn't do it in a piecemeal city by city way. The legislature really needs to take that action. Because if you do it city by city, it becomes kind of a patchwork quilt of different approaches. You want the legislature to do that statewide. I think that we want to tighten up laws against drug dealers. There have been some adverse case law out of the Court of Appeals in terms of our ability to prosecute people for dealing drugs. And so nothing to do with ballot measure 110, but that's an area where I think we can tighten up our law, and so we've proposed that.
And that has to do with, do you actually see them dealing, and how much do they have in their pockets and that kind of thing?
Precisely. We used to call that Boyd delivery, which is the name of the case law that it was based on. The Court of Appeals said that no longer counts, that you need to actually see somebody doing the delivery. So our proposal is to create the new crime of possession with the intent to deliver. So we no longer have to have the fiction of the dealing thing happen. Treatment. We absolutely need to see lots more treatment come online. Also, we propose that we'd like to see follow-up when somebody overdoses, that there ought to be a team of individuals that follow up with them. Other communities have done this. They have put together these teams of professionals, not necessarily police officers, but health professionals, that get the person's information when they resuscitate them, and then they can follow up with them within 24 hours. That's kind of one of those golden moments, people have called it, where you hit that moment in your life where you might be ready for a change, an inflection point. And other communities have had great success at getting people connected to treatment with that resource.
It was an interesting conversation, and thanks to Mike Schmidt for taking the time to sit down with me. Now, I know that was a lot, but we do want to hear your thoughts on this. Did anything the DA say change the way that you think about how he's done over the past few years? Why or why not? Anything surprise you? You know the drill. Email us. The address is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail. Our phone number is 503-226-5090. Coming up next on The Story, we're bringing in Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino to give us a sort of ice storm debrief, as well as news that another system could bring us a wintry punch tomorrow. The latest forecast is next, and later.
For a while I thought these hands were strong, but they failed when the time came.
A gut-wrenching interview with a man who says he tried to save two women trapped in a burning church in Northeast Portland over the weekend. What we know about the possible cause of the deadly fire when The Story returns. All right, let's get right to it with Chief Meteorologist Matt Zaffino with the highlights. How'd it come down, Matt?
You know what? We got the ice we were expecting to get in most places, a little bit less in some areas, more in others. Here's one report from Rocky Butte of 3/10 of an inch of ice. Some of the bigger ones, though, were up in Clark County, like this one from Camas. 3/4 of an inch. We'll round that up to 8/10 of an inch of ice. There, we can click on some more, right? I know. Click on a few more of these icons and well, as long as I don't get the little red square, we'll get some more reports. There's 4/10 of an inch of ice. Down in the Portland area, Mount Tabor had about a half an inch of ice. I think that's what this one is. The clicking is, there you go, Mount Tabor about a half an inch of ice. And then the similar amounts throughout town. We had a half an inch downtown. That's this one down by the junction of I-5 and I-205 in Durham, 4/10 of an inch of ice. And then out in Hillsborough, we'll get one there. That's also 4/10 of an inch of ice. So the ice came as we pretty much expected. Some good snow amounts, too, out in parts of Klickitat County in the Gorge. There's 3 inches of snow in Goldendale. So, yeah, it broke down in terms of the amount of ice we got about the way that we thought it would. The other question I've been getting a lot, or at least recently, Pat, is about records that we've been setting during this spate of winter weather. Over the weekend, we had record cold daytime highs, only reaching 21 Saturday, only reaching 23 on Sunday. We didn't break the morning low, but these highs are interesting because we've been breaking a few records that were set back in 1950. And meteorologists locally know that January of 1950 was one of the coldest months we've ever had in Portland and throughout the Willamette Valley. So the fact that we're breaking some records from 1950 says something. Record lows Tuesday, yesterday, Hillsborough dropped to 13, McMinnville tied it at 18. So there have been records on both the warm end of the day, warm and the cold end of the day. And just to remember back in December, we had record warm weather. Boy, seems like a thing of the past, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sure does. Hey, Matt, here's what I want to ask you.
Yeah.
I know you're going to give us all the numbers and everything, but you know, you're going to do that again at 6:30. You've been live every 5 minutes for like the last 5 weeks. How are you doing? How are you holding up? How are you getting all your words straight and all this working?
Thanks, Pat. I appreciate you asking. I'm doing fine. We had some challenges with my family, like many families had. We lost power for 2 days. We had broken and burst pipes. Got that all sorted out and just kind of keeping it rolling. And in terms of the work and the words and the weather, I mean, that's my passion, you know, so I just try to ingest as much information as I can and then put it back out in a meaningful and informative way that's easy for people to digest. So in that way, I guess I'm kind of like a mother bird.
No, it's great. And I think people at home maybe don't realize how hard it is, literally just to get the words right and to be able to say the right thing at the right time as you're pointing. So, you know, hats off to you. You've been killing it.
Hey, thanks, Pat. I appreciate that.
You betcha. All right, let's get moving on here. One other thing, I guess, before we move on, Matt, there's more coming tomorrow, yeah?
Yeah, there is more coming tomorrow, but I think this time the icy finger of the gorge will only extend to about I-205. Temperatures just barely above freezing in the metro, warmer as you go on down to the south here, but look at the gorge in the 20s there, so that's a problem because we're going to see a developing east wind tomorrow, so we see some freezing rain again, but this time only right up to about I-205 and a lot less than what we had yesterday. It won't be as widespread and it won't be as thick. Now out in the gorge, they're going to see freezing rain and snow, quite a bit of snow, 6 to 9 inches out around Hood River. But for the metro area, while we don't warm up very much, it's going to be a cold, windy and rainy day. The freezing rain should be limited to areas east of I-205.
All right. Thank you, Matt. We'll be right back right after this. Well, this storm has been a rough one and probably one of the most deadly in recent memory for winter storms. Tonight, at least 10 deaths are being blamed on the winter weather in our area over the past few days. At least half of those likely due to hypothermia. 4 in Multnomah County and 1 Tigard resident is believed to have frozen to death inside their home. Even as temperatures hover around freezing, Multnomah County's state of emergency, it's over, meaning that warming shelters closed this morning. Blair Best has our story.
As ice coats the streets of Portland, homeless people use paths of cardboard to get around.
I mean, it sucks. It's cold.
This man was staying at a warming center. It closed Wednesday morning.
They just said it was time to go and kicked us out. So I had the idea to come here and light things on fire.
If they could have let us stay, for the rest of the day until the snow melted, that would have been ideal.
Some left the emergency shelters with new supplies.
Tent, sleeping bag, 1 MRE, and a tarp.
Those only go so far.
Quite literally, it's illegal to camp, so what's the point? Every time I have a tent, it gets stolen anyway, so I don't really care.
Since Friday, 4 people have died in Portland from suspected hypothermia and another in Tigard. One of those deaths is a woman who spent time at Blanchet House.
I mean, I don't even know what to say to that. Somebody dying because, they're freezing to death. That's kind of scary.
In Northeast Portland, this church caught fire early Sunday.
That's crazy. And you could see fire probably 3 feet, 3 stories tall.
We're told 2 pastors lived there.
They lived upstairs.
They both died in the fire. Reggie, who's homeless and stayed there from time to time, did all he could to save them.
For a while, I thought they said we're strong, but they failed when the time came. We both tried. We couldn't get to them fast enough.
Portland Fire has not confirmed the cause, but there are talks of it starting from a generator. The fire department tells KGW they aren't ruling out the possibility of the cause being weather-related.
Just one day you're with someone, and the next day they're just gone. I mean, I don't get it.
And as the storm's aftermath makes life outside that much harder, just making it through the night is a fear shared by far too many.
I mean, people are also still cold and hypothermic from before, so, it's going to be ongoing.
Now, 2 other people also died during this storm. An elderly man in Lake Oswego died after a tree fell and hit his home. And another person living in an RV in southeast Portland also died after a tree fell and hit their RV, starting a fire. Blair Best, KGW News.
So sad. All right. Thank you, Blair. Hey, that's the end of our show. Thanks for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. That just goes on and on and on. Instead of the good stuff up next, the team's going to bring you a normal newscast with more weather coverage around the metro area. In the meantime, I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.